This is CBC Vancouver News.
Either they're still alive or they die. I don't know.
Canadians worry about loved ones in Gaza with an Israeli ground invasion imminent. Plus,
I met all my best friends here, so it's kind of sad, seeing all my memories just go away.
an elementary school in Port Coquitlam goes up in flames. The cause suspicious. And
a lot of people around here have pets and don't have access to veterinary services, which can be incredibly expensive.
a free vet clinic on the downtown east side helps pets and their owners. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Beginning in the Middle East, where the UN says the humanitarian situation in Gaza is fast becoming untenable. No fuel, no running water, and food supplies are dangerously low. The grim assessment comes with the expected Israeli ground offensive now appearing imminent. The CBC's Sasha Petrusek begins our coverage tonight.
Soldiers, tanks, and heavy equipment pile up along the border with Gaza as Israel prepares to enter. Are you ready for what comes next? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asked them. The people of Gaza are not. After a week of Israeli airstrikes, which local health authorities say killed more than 2,200, many have begun an exodus south, warned to leave their homes by Israel. It is a long, dangerous trek for hundreds of thousands. Desperation is growing here as food and fuel run out, supplies blocked by Israel. Now it promises an imminent military offensive from land, sea, and air, one meant to destroy Hamas, it says, the militant group which attacked Israel. But the government's long-term plan is less clear.
What happens next? And there is no doubt in my mind that there are figures in the government and in the military who are asking the same question. But to be very frank, if they have answers, they are not sharing them. And I am not at all sure they have answers.
As for Hamas, its leader has vowed to keep fighting, vowed that Palestinians will never be forced from Gaza. Foreigners, including Canadians, are trying to leave Gaza, told to gather at the southernmost exit to Egypt at noon today. Many terrified, like this British girl.
Every place I go run away, and I just find bombs and I find dead people. And maybe one day I'll end up like them, but it's a really scary thing for me.
But they remain trapped. The agreement to open the gates derailed. Ottawa says it is working on alternatives.
And I can understand that there's the disappointment and the fear and the anxiety.
In the meantime, military preparations for Israel's attack on Gaza continue, with the arrival of more weapons and ammunition from the United States. Sasha Petrusek, CBC News, Toronto.
It is believed more than 150 people with a connection to Canada are inside the Gaza Strip. This includes Canadian citizens, their foreign relatives, and possibly permanent residents, too. As the CBC's Elo Musa reports, Canadians in Israel are still trying to get out of the region as well.
In England, Germany, and France, protesters came out in support of Palestinians. Many also condemned Israel's intensified strikes on Gaza in retaliation for Hamas's deadly attack on civilians and soldiers 1 week ago. Similar actions also took place in cities across Canada. In Tel Aviv, outside of Israel's defense ministry, dozens gathered to demand the safe return of hostages held by Hamas. My daughter is one of around 120 hostages that we know about, says Shira Albag, and there are a lot of others whom we don't know about. They have to get them home now. Some in Israel are now trying desperately to leave the region. The first group of evacuated Canadians were airlifted to Canada on Friday. But for Canadians trying to leave Gaza, for now, there is no way out.
Canada has an agreement with Israel to get Canadians out of Gaza. Things are very volatile obviously in Gaza, where it is one of the worst places on earth right now to be living in, but also at the same time, we're convinced that we can work with Israeli authorities to get Canadians out.
Jolie says there are about 160 Canadians and their relatives in Gaza who've requested a safe passage out. Rola Baker in New Brunswick is desperate to reach her family there.
There's no word to describe what's going. I barely connect to them. Either they're still alive or they die. I don't know.
The number of Canadians in Gaza who have died in the conflict is not known. But Sheer Georgie is the fourth Canadian in Israel confirmed to have been killed. The 22-year-old went missing last week after Hamas militants ambushed a music festival near a kibbutz. Canadian officials say there are still 3 Canadians in Israel missing. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
It has been exactly 1 week since that initial attack by Hamas, and Lebanon is sending a formal complaint now to the UN Security Council over yesterday's death of a journalist. He was killed amid cross-border strikes between Israel and Hezbollah militia fighters and was in a group of journalists when missiles struck. He was a Lebanese national, and his funeral was held today. Lebanon blames Israel, calling it a deliberate killing. Israel's military has not said whether its forces were to blame, but does say it is investigating, calling the death tragic. Well, back here at home, a fire has destroyed an elementary school in Port Coquitlam. Hazel Trembeth Elementary is all but burned to the ground after the flames broke out overnight. The school district is left scrambling to redirect students ahead of classes come Monday morning. As our Yasmin Gandam reports, police are investigating this fire as suspicious.
Flames like this one completely engulfing the elementary school, sparking shock and panic in the community.
Yesterday, I was happy playing with my friends at the school, but now today it started burning.
He is one of roughly 200 kids who attended Hazel Trembeth, a school with students from kindergarten to grade 5. The fire started sometime early Saturday. Police say they got the call shortly after 3 a.m. No one has been hurt, but Coquitlam RCMP are investigating, saying they consider this fire to be suspicious. The school district is working hard on a plan to support the community before class resumes Monday.
Likely it is relocating students temporarily to another site in the short term. Obviously, best case scenario would be able to keep the 10 divisions that are at this school together. But we're quite a full district. We've been growing quite a bit over the last few years.
Despite the smoke, residents came out to watch firefighters tackle the flames, standing in shock as the school crumbled.
It's very nice, very peaceful, beautiful neighborhood, people with dogs, children running around. Stop, Misha. And it's so nice looking school. And see, it's half school is burned. I cannot believe my eyes, honestly.
For the school community, both past and present, it is a loss of more than just a school.
I met all my best friends here, so it's like kind of sad, like seeing all my memories just go away, just go away.
You know, it's been a long time that this place is here. My wife was a PAC member here, so she knew this place very well. It was very active here. I feel sorry for the teachers. They get all moved now.
So we moved here 2 years ago. Yeah, the second years in the school for my son. Yeah, and we're worried now.
Many families disrupted by the loss, asking what Monday will bring. The school is holding an information session, and Coquitlam RCMP are asking anyone with footage from the area to contact them. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Port Coquitlam.
Well, to honor the fallen heroes of Ukraine since the Russian invasion began last year, several communities in BC gathered today for a charity walk.
Ukrainian people and Ukrainian armed forces defend not only their own freedom, but freedom of all Europe against the brutal slaughter by Russia.
Dozens came together this afternoon at Jack Pool Plaza in downtown Vancouver. The Maple Hope Foundation organized today's event. It's a nonprofit that works to provide humanitarian relief to Ukraine and helps displaced Ukrainians arriving here in Canada.
There are so many Ukrainians that left Ukraine. Close to 200,000 came to Canada. And we want them to be part of the larger community. We want them to heal in the community. And we want to unite people, because united we are stronger and we can help more those that are in Ukraine.
Charity walks also took place today in Nanaimo, Kelowna, and Castlegar. Well, some 200 people gathered at Oppenheimer Park in Vancouver today for a free veterinary clinic, offering not only help to pets, but also their owners and vital care. As Janila Hamilton is finding out, the need for these types of services is rising right alongside the growing affordability crisis in BC.
Do wash your hands, okay? Otherwise, just let it dry on its own.
Receiving pro bono animal care, pet food, supplies, and education. Invaluable services for many here.
They're my everything. I don't have kids, so this is my kid, my love.
For a lot of owners, this is their person. This is their best buddy, their best friend. So they will prioritize getting food and getting shelter for their animals.
Abby Berg says every day she has to choose between putting food on her table or feeding her pets.
I'll feed my animals before I eat. If I have nothing in the fridge, for myself, as long as my animals are good, I'm good.
It's a sacrifice many living on the downtown east side say they're often forced to make.
A lot of people around here have pets and don't have access to veterinary services, which can be incredibly expensive.
We step in and help with things like vaccines, which they can't access on their own, treatments for ear medications, referrals for spay-neuter services.
The increasing costs of vet services and added stress for pet owners living on low income, like 73-year-old Mike Kennedy. He says 4-year-old Rocky has helped improve his physical and mental health.
He was a lifesaver, there's somebody to talk to. You're in the house by yourself, you can't go out. And I went out every day and took him down to the seawall for a walk.
Kennedy says typically his senior's home does not allow pets. Another challenge organizers say many in marginalized communities are facing.
Not a lot of places are pet friendly, and the places that are either restrictive, sometimes with size or numbers.
Just because they have a dog or cat shouldn't be a barrier to, having a roof over their head or, accessing preventative care for themselves.
Kennedy says events like this free health clinic eases some of that burden.
Nowadays, with the rent going up and everything that's going on, it's just this, you got to kind of stretch your dollar to, to get by. But this place is really saved me hundreds of dollars, really.
The clinic also offering people a chance to get vital medical care, including flu and COVID vaccines and mental health support. Janila Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Houses across the province opened their carefully engineered doors today. From Vancouver Island to the East Kootenay, all the homes had one thing in common. They were built with the climate in mind, retrofitted to meet environmental building codes. Our Corey Bullock tagged along on one home tour in Kimberley today.
Pretty high tech. For homeowners like Anna McIndoe, building a new home with a climate-friendly footprint was a no-brainer.
Super important for climate change, living in this climate future that we're facing, super important.
Her home is one of dozens in BC in the Climate Friendly Homes Tour.
The Climate Friendly Homes Tour is intended to invite the public into homes that have been either recently constructed to high performance standards or renovated or retrofitted to high energy efficiency.
She says that the Kootenays are becoming a hotspot for sustainable building. Aside from Victoria, Kimberley is one of BC's leading communities, with most new homes exceeding Step 3 of the BC Building Code. 5 is the highest step when construction is considered net zero.
We've got a few builders in that community that have demonstrated significant leadership over the years in just building good homes that operate at a lower cost because of its energy efficiency and suit the mountain environment and the climate that we live in.
Bruce Murdoch is among them. He says he's motivated to reduce emissions because of climate change.
The interesting things the consequences of doing that is that we're producing a more efficient home, we're producing a more comfortable home, and we're producing a home that is going to last 200 years instead of 75 years.
He says there's a lot of skepticism about heat pumps and how they hold up through the winter in cold climates. In spite of the doubts, he says they're a main feature in a home ready to weather climate change.
Last winter we had some very, very extreme cold weather. December 22nd we got to -35 and the home was quite comfortable.
And that's why the Community Energy Association wants people touring climate-friendly homes.
What really helps to make it real for the average citizen is to see and feel and touch what a solution is in their own community.
Since May, BC requires most new buildings to meet higher efficiency standards. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Kimberley.
Well, some British Columbians were lucky enough to catch a glimpse of the partial solar eclipse this morning. The Nanaimo Astronomy Society hosted an event, and it started with minimal clouds early on, but at the peak of the eclipse, conditions did worsen.
But then when we came down here, of course, we got a solid deck of clouds, and so there's not really any hope of seeing the eclipse with the naked eye.
Some were able to see it, though. One viewer sent in these photos from Departure Bay this morning, just as it happened.
I hear very clearly when the missile struck the building.
Well, still ahead, it has been 5 decades since families had to flee Chile after a military coup sparked widespread violence. We hear how members of BC's Chilean community are marking the anniversary. That's next. Welcome back. 50 years have passed since a military coup in Chile led to widespread violence. It forced many families to flee and thousands resettled in Canada. Members of BC's Chilean community are marking the anniversary, acknowledging there is still a lot more healing to do. Our reporter John Hernandez spoke to Gloria Diaz, who eventually came to Canada herself. She left a country shattered, though, and friends and family still behind. Here are some of her memories of that time.
The missiles, for instance, that was the first shock to me. I was few blocks away, so I hear very clearly when the missile struck the building. Never heard anything like that ever before or after. So when I talk about September 11th, the first memory is that it was 3 missiles against the building. Very shocking, very scary. The message was very clear. We are now in charge, so you obey. You know, to terrorize the population, and sure enough, they got that. Was not resistant to the coup d'etat. Nobody was organized. Let's say people that were supporting Allende, was no one organized. How? In the first place, you're talking an army, and you're talking the police and the Navy and the Air Force. How could you confront an incredible amount of people with training, big weapons? Impossible. So we went home. But things didn't stop there. For instance, my mom told me that the tanks went by our house, but the streets are very narrow. So for a tank to go through, it felt like it was an earthquake because everything trembled with the weight of this thing. What's the purpose of that?
Yeah.
My mom and dad flew with my 2 youngest sisters in September 1975. And my brother and I were left behind because at the time, if you were 18, you have to apply by ourselves. Even though we apply all together, but then the government took the time to interview us and whatever other things, investigate us, I guess, and then we flew a year later. And it was voila! And we landed in November 26 in Edmonton, and everything was white. Super cold. So the question is, how are we going to survive here? It's so cold. But sure, we were so happy to be with Mom and Dad again.
And you're looking at a live shot of Cambie Street in BC Place. Well, showers will continue off and on throughout the weekend. I'll tell you about your 5-day forecast coming up next. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. The Chutzpah Festival returns November 2nd to 23rd with an exciting lineup of performances, including dance, music, theater, and more. For tickets, visit chutzpahfestival.com. And join CBC Vancouver's Leanne Young at the Alumni UBC Achievement Awards November 14th. The event honors members of the UBC community through their endeavors and commitment to help shape a better world.
To Victoria now, where the Museum Point Ellis House teamed up with Victorian Vogue Historical Fashions. It's a nonprofit teaching history through clothes.
Fashion has an important part in history because it is how people lived and how they socialized. So it's also one of the features in this event.
They taught what the clothes were made of back then, as well as trends of the time and where they would be worn. And time for a look at the forecast. Let's start with the current temperatures on the south coast. Still quite a mild night, if not rainy in many areas. That low pressure system is still sending pulses of rain across the coast. So starting with Vancouver Island, moving across the lower mainland and even through the interior of BC. We'll see that continue through the weekend. But here's a look. We're still in the double digits for the most part across most of BC, except for the very northeastern parts. Here's this system. You can see it's kind of coming in pulses of rain. Tofino, the west coast of Vancouver Island, getting the brunt of it, and then as it moves across Metro Vancouver, those showers will continue. You can see even tonight and through the interior and the Okanagan as well, getting a lot of precipitation. But it's kind of a sunny mix of sun and cloud, a bit of rain here and there, depending on where you are. Here's the temperatures for tomorrow. So still fairly warm, kind of where we should be for this time of year. But those showers won't be a complete washout for most areas, kind of off and on, even through the Kootenays as well. But in through the interior, we might see some dry breaks tomorrow. Here's the 5-day forecast for Vancouver. There it is, lots of rain. I guess what we can expect for this time of year, but still into those double digits, even for our overnight lows, and we'll start to dry out towards the end of the work week. And that is your late news for this Saturday, October 14th. For news anywhere, anytime, you can download our free CBC News app. You can always find us online as well. We're at cbc.ca/BC. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.